Hello, everyone. Today is Thursday, May 4th. This is the Cluster API Provider Azure Office Hours. If you're joining us for the first time, just a reminder that we follow the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be respectful to everyone and raise your hand if you'd like to speak. We'll get started, and if you would like, please add your name to the attendee list. I'm not seeing any new faces here, so I'm going to skip the welcome new attendees. I think we all know each other. And then let's get right into the discussion. So I know we have a few things to talk about around 1.9. So I guess, Matt, do you want to start with the announcements, and then we can talk about the things that Ashutosh found?
Sure. I mean, basically 1.9 got released yesterday. Maybe someone can summarize the sort of features and high level stuff. I stared at the list for a long time, and and no themes kind of emerged to me. Lots of fixes around machine pools, some follow up on. I mean, you could read the list. There's a lot of stuff in here. I had trouble summarizing it, but CI looks very green. So hopefully, except for the things that Ashutosh is about to lay down, it's a good release. I don't know. That's all I can think of.
Thanks. And then did you also have the next one?
Sure. Yeah, I put that on there. Just wondering if we should do a patch release today. I think we probably should. There's only a couple things in there. You can click on the link if you want to see for sure.
So I don't think any of this is really user facing, is it?
Not necessarily. It would be nice to sync up with Cappy, but again, it's kind of a loose dependency, so it doesn't really matter. I tend to want to go ahead and do a patch release if there's anything in there, but we don't need to.
Yeah, so we will need to do a patch release. I guess this brings us to the next point. So maybe we should talk about that. I think there will be a need for a patch release very soon because of what Ashutosh found. So maybe we can combine. Jack?
So are those couple of commits that you just showed, are those already in 1.9.0? Okay,
Yes.
cool. And I'll have a follow-up remark on that in a second. So I'm curious also, like Matt, about the Cappy bump, because there is additional end-to-end stuff in there that I want to see on flaky tests that will help us to finally hopefully make progress on getting rid of those flakes. But I think if it's in 1.9.0 and test info has been updated to release 1.9, that has test info been updated to release 1.9? No, it hasn't. Okay. So once we do that, then I think we'll start getting that additional Cappy signal, because the jobs that I'm referring to are running against main and the 2 release branches. So we're actually already getting that against main. So I think thanks for letting me live stream my inner monologue. But I will say that normally we would release a patch release with the commits in the next minor on the same day as the new minor release, right? So I think my remark on this is that, Matt, you normally don't even have to ask permission. I think that's part of the process, is that when we release a new minor, we also update the -1. So now we have a new set of N-2 releases. So I think we actually should release this just according to the current dev process. Is that controversial, what I'm saying? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
I'm curious, should we also have released the last 1.7 before calling it deprecated? Isn't that what we usually do? But I guess in this there's nothing.
There isn't anything in there, yeah.
Yeah, so okay.
Otherwise,
I think that's, maybe we can take a follow-up item to check the actual release docs about that, but I think that's the pattern. So hopefully it's actually documented. But yeah, this gets us off the hook.
So, okay, so I think we're good for 1.7 because there's nothing in there. For 1.8, I would say let's just hold, since let's talk about the next item first and then circle back to this. But I think we're ready in any case to start well, actually, let's talk about the next item first, and then we can talk about test infra as well, see if that affects it. So Ashutosh, go ahead. Do you want to tell us about what you found?
Yeah, I think the first issue has already been reported by Francesco. Just it slipped from my eye. I didn't see it earlier, and this was reported in one of the downstream pipelines. So I took a look at this one. So basically, this has to do with. So what happens is webhooks does not trigger the logic on reads. So if you have an existing Azure cluster object that came from a version prior to this change, and when the CAPG controller upgrades, the defaulting does not happen because there was no write that was made to Azure cluster. And now when the CAPG controller tries to do a write, it just fails. I have summarized this into this issue. If you scroll down, Matt.
This one
And
first.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the fix is that, whenever the CAPZ wants to update Azure cluster object as part of reconciliation, it should actually put the right value for the backend tool name. That is basically what is done in the defaulter logic of webhook. So we have like three load balancers backend tool name, and if the load balancer name is empty, we just put like the name that should have been put without this chain. This is like a tricky one where the defaulting logic does not get triggered because there was no update in the cache. And CAPZ actually reads from the cache. So if once we have an update event for Azure cluster object, it will work fine.
Yeah,
Does it make sense?
It makes sense. Thanks for explaining and looking into this. I think this is us trying to make breaking changes outside of API versions, basically, and having to do some back compat, because adding a required field is breaking, right? If it was not required, it would be okay, but the fact that the field is required is what's breaking.
Yes.
Jack?
Is the requirement enforced only in the webhook flow?
Is
I
it
did not get the question.
or is it the open I was going to say open AI, but no. The
Open API.
open API, thank you. The open API is enforcing it, or is it the webhook that's enforcing? Do you know? It's not even enforcing, it's just failing at the create. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's going all the way to the Azure API call.
Oh yeah, so it fails at the Azure API because we try to submit a, what is that? This load balancer data that does not has a backend tool name.
So
okay, looks like we need to invert. So looks like we have existing logic which detects if there's no load. Basically, we assign a backend pool name based on load balancer input via a webhook, right? So now we need to invert that for back compat scenarios. So the load balancer name needs to get updated to match the new backend pool name. Although, I mean, I don't know if that's actually going to work. So I think we need to figure out a way to identify. We need to like audit the new webhook stuff that we introduced with this change, and audit it for how to deal with upgrade scenarios, existing.
Go ahead, Ashutosh.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand completely, but the webhook changes that are there will not help. We will need to have a defensive logic in CAPZ controller itself, because let's talk about when this change was not there. CAPZ controller never submitted a data that had an empty backend pool name. Now, after this change, there can be a situation where CAPZ controller submits data to Azure API that has an empty backend pool name. And that's where it fails to Azure API. So far, it makes sense that
We're not running the webhooks as part of the upgrade is the issue.
yes,
Nothing has changed.
yeah, yes. And as part of upgrade, we are not running webhook. And as far as I know, it's not in our control because the webhooks for that particular object will only trigger if there is a write on that object. So if there is already a write event on that object, then only it will trigger. And that was new to me. I didn't know that. So I saw a thread on API machinery where I got this info. So I was under assumption that whenever the controller comes up, like, or when a new controller is coming up, for all the objects, the webhook will run, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah, we've had to do some similar backwards compatibility handling in the past. That's what I pointed you to in the PR. But
Set DNS.
yeah, here's one example. So essentially, whenever we add a field that gets defaulted in the webhooks and is now is new in between API versions, then we need to also handle like the case where it's empty in the controller because of this reason.
Yeah. So Cecil, no, before we get into the next one,
Yeah.
let's sort of let other people speak. Jack, does that make sense, or like we can follow up like offline also? What's going on there?
I'm actually, maybe this is naive of me, but I'm not worried about it making sense. I feel an intuitive confidence that there's a fix for this.
Sure.
So take that for what it's worth. So no, I don't entirely understand what's going on and how to fix it, but I would be very surprised if there's not a fix in code for this, and if we have to like revert it and start from scratch or something. I feel like these types of changes we've done a bunch of times, and they're always sort of nasty, but we have enough patterns in place that we should be able to. All you need to really be able to do is during the flow, whether it's reconciliation or API server webhooks, you need to be able to identify from the input data whether or not you are in a sort of legacy scenario or you're a new cluster scenario built from that code. And in my experience, there's usually a way to do that. So I feel like we should have a fix.
Yeah. And Ashutosh has a PR open, which has a fix, and that fix works. I just have a comment, I think, about, making durable, because I think we want to be able to fix it, not just for people upgrading to 1.9, but for people upgrading to 1.10, 1.11, etc. Since we don't have a guaranteed version per version upgrade enforced.
So I had a question on that. So like when I wanted to comment, I did comment to that GitHub went down. So yeah, so I couldn't comment on that. So like that makes sense. We could move out to a separate function so that it processes for a while. But do we want to like support for the versions that go out of support from the community? Because
you mean
after
upgrading from them?
Upgrading from, let's say, 1.4.1.6.1, something like that, because after some point of time, we may not need this code.
That's a great question, actually. We haven't defined that as an upgrade policy. I think CAPI does support upgrade from any version as long as it's within the same API version contract. So in theory, and we do test upgrade, so we have an upgrade test that and I think Willie recently added that as he removed the v1 alpha 4 v1 alpha 3 code, but it's building a cluster from CAPZ and CAPI 1.0 and then upgrading that to the latest whatever branch we're testing from, so main or PR. So that's testing, like skipping all the versions. I'm kind of interested to know why that test isn't failing. Maybe we should check that also. So once we fix this, maybe we should look into like repair, like what could we improve so we would have caught this next time. Maybe that's adding another test from like the latest release to the main branch. I don't know if that would have caught it, but
Yeah, I did not get a chance to investigate on this, but that's my next item. Really got it.
Yeah, Cappy has a bunch of those tests from different versions. Yeah, so I don't know how many of them we want to add, but I can definitely work on adding more of them and seeing if I'm sure it'll be helpful for catching stuff like this. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I'll take a look at that.
yeah, and then Jack is saying in the chat, not sure it's easy, but it might be beneficial to run this on all PRs. And I'm saying maybe we should do that on all PRs that touch the API, which could have a backwards compatibility impact. Ashutosh?
Yeah, got it. So just to come to a closer on this PR, I think what you suggested, Cecil, putting that does not hurt. So do you think I should go ahead and do that? Because it doesn't hurt to like move into how the set DNS main function has already done it.
Yeah, I think as long as we haven't defined this is the only versions you can upgrade from to and from, we can't, like the assumption is you can upgrade from everything. So I think we have to stick to that for now.
So basically a getter function that encompasses all the logic that's still in this anonymous function rather than.
Yeah, so you'd want to just take your function, I think, like what you have is correct. It's just instead of saying we're going to remove it, once people have upgraded, I think we just want to keep that somewhere. Like the reason I said move it out is just that so that it's cleaner. That way we don't have to do it every reconcile loop. We just do it once, and then for the future it's set. And the user can see it in there. It's persisted in the API.
Awesome. And okay, because I'm talking, let me finish here now. So shall I move this to that getter function, or just put it here on this file itself?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that last part.
So when I move this anonymous function from line 255 to 260 into a different function, the home for that function is this file or the actual file where we put like all the generator and getter functions for such thing. There is a file somewhere else that says generating and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you can keep it in this file. We can follow up async on the PR, but I would change it to, instead of just returning, just setting like if this is empty, then set this to that.
Got it.
What I mean?
Makes sense.
Okay,
yeah.
I can follow up on the PR, but yeah, thank you for doing this, Ashutosh. And then do you want to talk about the second one? Because there are two.
Oh, yes. Second one is, can you please open that thing up? Cecil, sorry. This one is when we have accelerated networking enabled, and when we upgrade to Cappy versions after 1.7.0, what happens is there is a logic in one of the PRs that kind of moves accelerated networking from Azure machine object to an array of. So there is a new network interfaces field that got introduced in Azure machine. So accelerated networking moves into that, and we kind of try to set nil value to the deprecated accelerated networking field on Azure machine. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. Line 166. So whenever this line 166 executes, the webhook complains because it's an immutable fail. So what we need to do is we need to nuke this validate accelerated networking block from the webhook so that this doesn't complain. I have also outlined this in the issue itself. So what's happening if you see the issue, if you can open the issue back.
Nawaz?
Sorry, I had a thought about this. So if you look into the webhooks, while doing this comparison or while porting over the subnet name in accelerated networking, we also reset the subnet name. I was thinking if we could do a similar logic like that, where we port over the predefined accelerated networking as well. And that could save us from making it mutable or immutable, like changing the behavior of webhook. I'm not sure if I was able to add.
I did not quite get that, but
I'll post the link. I'll post the link to the code
sure.
on the chat. Just a thought. It should be present in the validation logic.
Got it. So step one is to like understand the issue, and then we can come to solution. I just raised a PR. That doesn't mean that that is the way to solve it. We can do whatever is the best one. So if you open the issue system, I have like again outlined. If you go on the PR description, I mean the issue itself, it should be linked in here.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I've written it like, how can you reproduce it? And this is the line which I suggested to kind of remove, and that's what my PR is trying to do.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. One question I had, and I tried to comment on your PR, but GitHub was also not letting me post comments at some point right before the office hours. So I don't know if it actually posted or not. I think the spirit of this validation is to make sure that a user doesn't change the value of accelerated networking after the cluster is created, because it can't be changed, right?
Right.
Should we replace this by an equivalent for the new field instead of removing it, so that we're keeping the coverage of validating the value doesn't change?
Good point. Yeah. So so you're saying that the new field, the new accelerated field should be immutable on Azure machine object.
Yeah, so I think it's in network interfaces. Although that, I don't know how, I guess it's part of this. Oh, we're already doing a deep equal, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, we can look into this, but I'm just curious if this covers the immutability of the accelerated networking.
Point noted, I'll take a look on that.
Okay, cool. Nawaz?
Yeah, that blocks the seal over there. You see at line 192 to 194, we carry over the subnet name, but we do not carry over the accelerated networking field. So I was wondering if such a similar logic can be performed if the accelerated networking is already set.
So this is the validating webhook, right? So it's only carrying it over just to make sure we're like not returning an error, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then the actual default is in here, where we carry over accelerated networking and subnet name.
Okay, let me revisit it. I
Okay.
think I did it wrong. Okay.
All right. In any case, thank you, Ashutosh. And in terms of so getting those fixes out, I think we all agree they're kind of very important bug fixes to release in a patch release. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
No, go ahead, finish your sentence.
I was just gonna say, like, should we talk about, yeah, I guess once we have the fixes merged, we should cherry pick them and then do a patch, which is kind of why I was saying maybe we can do this one, because I think at least one of them applies to 1.8. I don't know if both. Yeah. Jack?
So if you go back to that previous, if you just alt tab to where you were before, that exactly. So it looks like what's happening here is that we're literally moving the value of accelerated networking from one object to another. And at least the intention was like, let's clean up the no longer used property value on the old object by setting it to nil. So I think if that's what we're going to do, then we probably just need to update. We just didn't update the webhook accordingly when we did this work. And so if we go to the webhook and just literally identify what we're doing here, which is to say, when accelerated networking is not nil and it transitions to nil, that's allowed because we're literally doing it in our own code. And the webhooks are nominally meant to protect, user updates. So everything, I mean, I think this is just a good point of guidance. Everything that we're actually, all these transitions that we're doing in code always need a complementary webhook audit to make sure that we're not subverting what the webhook expects. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I think that would be the fix for this, is simply to update that accelerated networking
But
against the
that
Azure
makes
machine
sense.
spec. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. But if this comes from Open API, then will this work? If the field is immutable itself from the Open API schema.
That wouldn't make sense because we've been doing that non-nil to nil transition and it's been working. So if the Open API spec set it to, I mean, I'm actually not sure what you're saying, Ashutosh.
So maybe I'll need to test it. So I don't know. So my thought was, so you were saying that we write some code in webhook that says that this is a transition, just allow it, which makes sense. If that's possible, we should do that. I'm on same page to that, but just I'm thinking, if Open API schema says that a particular field is immutable, will this transition be still allowed? I don't know about that.
I think I'm confused by immutability in Open API spec. I don't think that's a thing. That's why we use webhooks for immutability.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Open API can enforce things like required, so it won't allow the field to have the 0 value, whether that's an empty string or 0 or nil. I think the point is that a change like Cecile was just describing, that can work in concert with webhooks when we're in a create flow, because we're doing that. I guess I don't want to digress. I'm actually happy.
It makes sense. Yeah, I'll try this change, Jack, and let's see.
Cool.
I think I misunderstood the immutability part. Sorry for confusing you. I got it.
Cool. I think we're all aligned that the change needs to happen in the validation webhook. It's just a matter of what we allow, what we don't allow.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So in terms of the patch release, or first of all, does anyone have any other questions or comments about these two fixes? Jack.
I'll say one more thing. I think there's a huddle conversation that could happen around that nilling out of the old value. I think there's an interesting conversation where you could argue that that was the wrong or the more dangerous approach. If you're evolving the spec to move configuration from one object to another, you could argue there's an argument to be made that having like additive or like superfluous configuration is safer for forward compatibility than that kind of approach where we nil out the existing value. So maybe something for folks to think about who are interested in that kind of thing.
Are we having that argument now? Because I have a response to that.
If we have time, what time is it? Yeah, we have time.
Go quickly. I think the reason we're not doing that is because then it allows not just us, but also the user to set both values. And if the user sets both values, it's ambiguous and we can't know which one they meant to use. So we have to disallow both values being set together at all times. Does that make sense?
It totally makes. I'm not saying the only argument is in one direction or the other, but I think it's just these are the things that we don't not have to think about. We don't have the option to not think about these things because we're in this world where we're maintaining a continually forward moving API. So that's just the sort of architectural assumptions that we have to deal with. So these are the kinds of things we always have to be thinking about as we evolve that API.
Yeah. All right, so for the patch release, I guess, sounds like Matt and Willie wanted to help with the patch release whenever we're ready. So Ashutosh, I guess, I'll just let you follow up with them whenever your fixes land in patch release or in the release branches, and we're ready for that. We can try to get a quick patch out.
Sure, I'll just incorporate the reviews on those two PRs to start with the problem. Matt and Willie.
Okay, great. And we also need to figure out which release branches they need to be backported to. If 1.7 is broken, I think we can also consider doing like a one-off, like extraordinary 1.7 patch. But yeah, let's talk about that in the issue. Okay. Next topic. I don't know who added that. Cloud provider Azure Go 120 tests. Jack.
I did add that, and I think we can't do that because we talked earlier about the fact that we haven't updated test infra to point to 1.9 yet. So I don't think any of the broken cloud provider tests that are using the one. Sorry for folks who don't understand. But the background is that cloud provider Azure has some CAPC dependent tests that require Go 120, and so we updated Go 120 at main. But those tests are using a released version of CAPC, and so I don't think we can. Go ahead.
Are the tests currently broken?
Yes, I think so.
Got it. So you're saying we would need to update to 1.9 to fix them?
Correct.
I see.
But there are some. There's a sort of related thing we have to do, which is that some tests need 1.9 in our big exploded ecosystem. So we need to be thoughtful about the test infra update to 1.9 of CAPC and essentially audit each update against the sort of question, will this test work with 120 of Go? Because release-1.9, the 1.9 branch in CAPC compiles Go at 120. So if any of those tests that's currently using release-1.8, which uses 1.19, if any of those tests doesn't work with 120, then we need to keep that at 1.8 of CAPC until those tests themselves, that particular part of the stack is 120 compatible.
Got it. Matt?
Yeah, well, you started to answer my question. I was going to ask, since it seems like a release related task, perhaps we should add this to the release tasks, but also do you want me to update test infra? You going to do it? You want to work on it together? I've seen the pattern in the past, but it sounds like it might be a little more complicated this time. So I could throw up the PR and then we could see, and we could poke at it.
I like the working together on it part.
Okay.
I think it should be part of the release tasks, Matt. We added it a few times, like a few releases ago because of this, I'm pretty sure. But it's because it's after the actual GitHub release step, it often gets missed.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Update tests.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Update Netlify.
Oh yeah, I haven't done Netlify yet either.
Yeah.
Actually, there's more to do.
So there's a few things we need to do after the release, but because it's down there in the doc, I think it's easy to miss. So maybe we should add, here, like, after this is done, keep going. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple small changes to make to this doc, so I'll put that in the PR.
Yeah, I think there's a natural human thing where you read announce release and you're like, whew, I can pour myself a cocktail, I'm done. I've announced the release.
Yeah. So are we ready to update the jobs to test to 1.9 in test infra, or did any of what we talked about today block us from doing that? I don't think it does, but
I agree. So the tests we're talking about, for folks who aren't fully understanding the context, are downstream, upstream, are downstream of CAPC. So these are projects in the Kubernetes Azure ecosystem who use CAPZ at a particular release to build Azure infra, Azure Kubernetes. So the tests, the bugs that we've been talking about are, I think you can isolate those to upgrade scenarios. And so none of these downstream tests that we're referring to that need the latest bits do upgrade tests. And so they should be safe to pin to 1.9 as of right now. So I think we can start that effort right away.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions, comments on this topic? All right, any other last minute topics before we move to milestone? All right. Let's do hopefully a quick milestone. So we're at the very beginning of the milestone cycle. So I think, thanks, Matt, for opening the new milestone. So let's first talk about the date for the next release, I guess. So this is June 27th. Is that 2 months? Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
It's a week shorter than 2 months because it seemed like a bad idea to do it the next week, which is 4th of July. And then I considered extending it a week, but I thought, I don't know. So yeah, we can change the date. I just picked that because I thought 4th of July week was a terrible week to do the release.
Okay. Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Jack about adding a week rather than removing one. I think we're already pretty aggressive with our release dates, but I don't know if anyone else has opinions. Jack said that in chat, by the way. That's why I'm saying that.
Yeah, I would vote for bumping it a week after July 4th versus prior. But yeah.
All right. Any objections? Matt, is that good with you? All right, let's just make that change right now. Oops, so July 4th, was it the Tuesday 11th? Okay, great. All right, that being said, I think most of the stuff in here is from the past milestone that wasn't closed before the release. So let's see. How do we want to do this? I think there's already a lot in here and we're just starting. So I think we're gonna have to be very intentional about either removing things or just not adding too much extra. If anyone has things that they're working on already or they know they're going to be working on in the next 2 months, I guess, please feel free to go ahead and add them to the milestone or tag me or one of us to add it if you don't have permissions. But in the meantime, I guess let's just check in for now, for today, on those that are already in the milestone, and then maybe next week we can move stuff in. Does that sound good? Okay. Great, so I'll just quickly go over them. Let's not go too much into detail, but like just say a quick, like still working on this, or like this is no longer relevant. Azure CNI was.
That should be there.
Okay. Azure machine template reconcile occasionally fails in Azure cluster identity. I think that one is not assigned, so no one's working on that. I think we were hoping to work on that last time around, but then we didn't. Anyone have any thoughts on whether it should be still in here or not? Okay.
You can keep it for a
Okay.
while. So
All right. Ashutosh, AD pod identity to workload identity.
Yeah.
Keep it.
so I think we have like review comments from Cecile and Anish responded to that, and I'm on to incorporating those. And I also plan to kind of give a walkthrough of that next week. When I was and Cecile were talking about that, so that it helps for folks to review. So I think work-wise, it's done. It's mostly like bringing all of us on the same page and getting that.
Yeah. Great. I think for this type of change, it's so big. I think in terms of like migration and like users, like having existing clusters. And I think it's better for us if we can manage to merge it at the beginning of a release cycle. So we have plenty of time to find edge cases and test it ourselves. I would feel much better about merging this at the beginning of 1.10 than at the very end of 1.9, like a week before we release. So let's try to get the PR in, as soon as we can so that we can get plenty of mileage before July.
Sure. So yeah, that's on my radar.
Cool. What is this? The updating state for machine pool map.
Yeah, I'd still like to work on that. I just didn't in the last cycle, but now that I'm reminded of it, let's leave it on the list.
Okay. Cool. I'll skip that one since it's a proposal for the one we just talked about. So I'm assuming we're keeping that too. Same thing with this. That's the PR. All right, John, audit docs for AKS managed clusters.
Yep, I'm still working on that one.
Cool. Nawaz, that one is related to the first one we talked about. That's the PR, so I'll keep that one. Unable to
That
use
one, yeah, I want to follow up on that as well. I just didn't get to it, but now I'm going to refocus on compute gallery. So I think this is in that area. So
Okay.
Let's leave it.
Sounds good. Jack, support user identity in CABZ managed AKS cluster.
I think that's fair to include. Are probably 80% of the way there. I've got some really good review comments from Ace, but
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, this is the bug that Ashtosh were talking about earlier, so we are very much keeping that one in. Support kubelet user managed identity, Jack, related to the first one.
that's actually what I was referring to.
Those are two separate issues. I think you assigned both of them saying, oh, they're probably in the same area, so I can.
I've got a PR. Maybe the PR didn't get bumped to the milestone. So because I know it was, or as I recall, it was in the 1.9 milestone a couple weeks ago. So let me see.
So there's one PR here that's assigned to this issue, and then the second issue here that doesn't have a PR, which is a different issue, I'm pretty sure. One of them is about the control plane, and one of them is kubelet or something like that.
Yep. I haven't quite got a handle on exactly what the distinction is between the two. So I have a PR that has a WIP disclaimer in front of it. So that's the one I'm referring to that I think should go into 1.10. And so we may as well just keep both of these in 1.10. And then if we solve only one or the other because we determine that they're entirely discrete, then we'll do that in 1.11, I guess.
Okay. Sounds good. Add support for confidential VMs. I can speak to that. I think we can keep it in. PR has been making some good rounds of review, and I think it's close to ready. The issue with that one is it's hard to test, but I digress. We can talk about that in the PR. Okay, this one's mine. I finally got the images available, so I have the PR. Having an issue testing it with CI entry point, and I'm trying to figure out a way to pin the Calico version, but I want to keep that in there. Hopefully get that done soon. All right, end-to-end test coverage for Azure CNI. I think that one's slightly related to the docs, but also different. Nawaz, are we keeping that one in there as well?
I think there are multiple. There is 2 PRs in here and also the issue. I think we can drop one of them, or we can keep. That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for us to keep issues in the milestone because they have the PRs linked to them anyways, but I think we've been kind of adding both. So yeah, it doesn't really matter to me, but if someone has a strong opinion, we can
Thank you.
have just agree on a process. All right, flat card tests. That one looks like it's soon to merge or close to merge.
Yeah, I think we just need to add that change to tilt file as well, I guess.
Okay. This one is the issue for that PR, so I will skip that. All right, Willie, do you know about that one?
Yeah, it's just a quick, like, good first issue unit test PR, but the author has been a little unresponsive. So I've posted a follow-up comment, and yeah, it should be merged in this release. But I'm not
Okay.
sure if these like unit test PRs need to be added to like a milestone, because this is like the only one out of like a bunch of them in the milestone. So
Yeah, I would also add anything that's a good first issue. Typically, we don't add to the milestone because we don't want them to be on the release path.
yeah.
So I would vote for removing it from the milestone. That doesn't mean we're not going to merge it this release, but just I don't think we need to be tracking it.
Yeah,
And
I'd say remove it. I'm not sure how it ended up on the milestone, but yeah, I think I'm voting for removing it.
all right. Where was I? So this is the work in progress PR, Jack, for control plane user managed identity or user assigned identity. Okay. All right, Matt, async. I guess all of this is all async or is all as a KV2. So we can.
Yeah, and it's all in progress. There's PRs out for it, but as you know, the one on the bottom has to go first, and then the other ones need to rebase off of it, and then we'll probably have some more back and forth about the async framework changes. But I think they're all moving along.
Okay, great. All right, is there anything anyone wants to add in here that should be in here?
I mean, there's going to be more stuff, right? I don't think I mean, I know for sure, obviously the stuff around the ASO work that John's doing to some capacity should be in there. So
yes, that's a good point.
But
I didn't see anything in here about ASO. So should we?
I mean, if you want to go to the board that has the projects under, and then the actual roadmap view, that I think would be, because that would actually be helpful.
Actually, David, do you want to kind of talk about this and like what it is and for people who
yeah, sure. I just wanted to this is a new view from GitHub on this roadmap view, and so it's obviously not comprehensive with what we have there, but my intention was to have something that's kind of higher level, kind of for some of the bigger items, right? Because it's just too much work to have every little thing there, but some of the things that are, you know, a week or more, right? Extra large items, you know, to put those in there and then kind of give a rough idea of when we think those are gonna merge. This hasn't been updated in a while, so you know, I think we can, yeah, that one's really large, so that might be a little too large to put into the one milestone, because that's the Uber issue, but some of the sub issues would be probably a good thing to put in. And so I think that's something here where if we want to try and say what's realistic to be done underneath that banner, I think that would be great to try and flush out. So yeah, some of these ones that are up there, I mean, you could go through in the timeline and see, yeah, which ones we think we might want to add to the milestone if they're not there. And we could also here, if you wanted to do another filter, you could just do minus the ones that are on milestone 10, because there may be some in there that are already on the milestone, but.
Oh yeah, how do I do that? Is it?
It's you do minus, yeah, and then milestone, like type milestone, yeah, and then just, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There you go. So those are ones that aren't on the milestone.
Got it. For ASO, John, there's no sub issues yet, right? It's just this big issue.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess should we convert some of the ones that are going to be 110 in here, and then that way we can add them individually to the milestone. I can also add this big one, but just to have a tracking point, but I don't think it's realistic that we're going to finish all of it in 110. What do you think?
Yeah, I think converting at least the first few of those to issues, so then we can add them to the milestone. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that would also be helpful, I think, as well, to try and break out what's when can we parallelize this stuff, right? So if other folks want to jump in on it to accelerate that, that'd be good. And so then we kind of like, ideally we can kind of know, you know, who, like roughly when, if it's even if it's a month or two, you know, 2 months out, like we think there'll be parallelization available, that would be good, because we are gating a lot of the upgrade stuff. That's a growing backlog of features that are missing from the managed cluster. And I do have an Uber issue on that as well. So yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think there are some like smaller opportunities to parallelize other things. So, but yeah, I'll make sure to clarify in the issues if there are any hard dependencies between issues. But then if there aren't any listed, then I think it's fair to assume that that's free to pick up at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. So I think if we just put a little more like conversion of some of the issues that you're currently working on, and then, you know, maybe call out ones that like right now, for instance, could be have someone else pick them up. That would be good to know. And then that way we have an opportunity to kind of make things go a little faster, to get towards, you know, obviously getting that whole thing upgraded, as well as getting the result after that of all the features people have been asking for quite some time.
Sounds good. This is very useful. Thanks, David. I'm wondering, should we try to do some backlog grooming with this? Maybe like alternate with the milestone planning that we do in the office hours. So like right now we're doing milestone plan pretty much every week, which I think every 2 weeks would be enough. And then we could alternate and do kind of grooming. So especially like, you know, through the bugs and
yeah, I think that'd be great. Yeah, I think that'd be great. Kind of prioritize and kind of keep on with a lot of things, because some of the stuff I mean we need the larger group to help with, right? I mean, I can only do so much on my own.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Matt?
And related to grooming, I'm not suggesting we do it now because we're running out of time, but we have a bunch of stuff in the v.next milestone, and I'm not really sure how we use that.
So that's so that's
ahead.
where I think Jack or Cecile, who have permissions, you could just do the bulk edit thing. Otherwise I have to click 150 items one by one and delete them, or delete them from the milestone. So that it would be fast for one of you two, but it would be a long time for me.
Sorry, what's the ask exactly? Remove things from
so basically go to, like, if you go right now to the milestone v.next.
Yes, how do I get out of here? Or cap Z. Okay.
Yeah, and then go to the milestone v.next, the milestones.
I mean, I can bulk transfer
then,
them all out of there. I just wasn't sure what we
just click on one of the 105 closed. Yeah.
The what?
Yeah. So the open ones are fine for now. I mean, I think that's another thing we should backlog room and see which of those we might want to put on 110. But there you go. And then on the milestone, I would just clear them into milestone. Yeah. Otherwise, what you have to do is go through all of them, right, and see when they were merged on which milestone. And I just don't think people care that much at this point. Right.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't have the ability to do what you just did. We talked about that already, but that's okay. It's complicated because of what permissions you have to give me and all that. But yeah. So it's thinking, but I think there was 105, so you probably have to do another batch after this. And then I think that should be it. And then we should go through the next one and see which of the next that are open should be potentially on the 110.
Cool. Does that cover it, Matt, or were you still raising your hand?
No, sorry, I didn't lower it. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, sweet. Ooh.
All right, I
Clean.
think this is time for today, so let's stop it there. Thanks everyone, and let's follow up on the test infra 1.9 and patch releases in Slack.
Cool.
All right. Bye all.
Ready?
Have a good
Thanks
one.
for hosting, Cecile.
Bye.